Welcome to the eClinicalWorks podcast. I'm your host, Brian Hughes. On today's podcast, we'll be discussing how eClinicalWorks uses the power of technology to create a single location to accurately search, sort, and act upon patient health information from multiple healthcare entities. Here with me today to discuss eClinicalWorks One Patient, One Record is Healow Insights Frank Bowe. Frank, thank you for joining the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Brian, and it's a pleasure being here, and thank you for having me on this podcast today.
Absolutely. Well, Frank, over the last several years, there has been a change in the way healthcare is being provided to patients. Now there is an added emphasis on value-based care and the quality in which the care is being delivered. Would you be able to speak about the change over the years?
That's a really great question, and to answer that question, we really have to understand what's the driving force behind value-based care and the emphasis of the quality of care. And the fundamental reason behind this movement is really ultimately the evolution of the reimbursement models that providers and payers are experiencing. As we've seen in the industry today, the world is moving, the earth is beginning to shift of what we know from 10, 15 years ago from a fee-for-service model to a pay for performance model or value-based care. In addition, if we look back, healthcare costs continues to rise. Patients were very dissatisfied with the care that was being delivered due to the fee-for-service model. Patients probably want to spend more time with their providers and feeling like they're being cared for rather than just being processed in a very quick manner. Thus, healthcare today is being transformed with the goal in mind to achieve the triple aim, which is to provide better healthcare, focusing on better outcomes at a lower healthcare cost, while improving and maintaining patient satisfaction.
That's great. And Healow Insights is in the middle of all that. Working with Healow Insights, how does it play a role in helping healthcare payers as well as healthcare providers deliver that quality of care to patients?
So that's really great. The whole concept of what Healow Insights was spawned from the idea is how do we add value to our providers while meeting the demands of the payers as we move more towards value-based care. And one of the core concepts of Healow Insights is the ability to empower the provider at the point of care with actionable data coming from the payers, giving the providers a full 360-degree view of their patient. Thus, with that type of enhanced viewing, they're able to enhance their clinical decisions, allowing the provider ultimately to improve the patient outcomes. Furthermore, there are many challenges that we see today that are faced by the payer and the provider when it comes to the process of just data sharing. Healow Insights helps bridge that gap. Using our medical record retrieval solution and discrete EHR solution, Healow Insights helps facilitate providers to share the data with their payers in an automatic, secure, and seamless fashion. Because of this really innovative solution with Healow Insights and the collaboration that we're bridging that gap between payer and provider. Today, we have grown and working with 31 payers regionally and nationally, connecting over 48,000 providers that have consented in to use Healow Insights services, touching over 7.4 million lives or medical records that are being shared today.
That's quite an impact. And when you're discussing, data being shared between the payer and the practices, how does Healow Insight, how are they able to share that data between the practice and the payer?
Think of us as a secure cloud-based service that the payer, once we have a contract with, will subscribe to. Once we have that contract in place, we will then create a payer portal. From this payer portal, that's where the payer can actually push and pull information directly from their payer portal. So no more having to allow third-party access or remote access. Practices don't have to give that. We can create that. We can be that conduit that be able to shift the data back and forth, but that bridge that keeps only pertinent information that belongs to that health plan. So in a ways of security, this is the top-notch security. So once we actually have that and we have that in place where we obtain that one-time consent with each payer. Again, what's really beautiful about the solution is that, again, it's at no cost to the practice. It's an opt-in rate. You can opt in out when you feel like it, not a problem, but generally speaking, once you use Healow Insights, you'll be very satisfied with our service. Again, it's more encrypted and it's much more faster. But with that, they would make the request from the payer portal. and we call a member request file. We will then actually go ahead and pull that using our matching algorithm against your database, and it has to have certain criteria to match. If it doesn't meet the 100%, it automatically fails and goes into an exception port. Thus, as a practice, you're ensured with the safety that we're not sending the wrong member to the wrong health plan. That checks and balance will not allow that. So that way you can feel safe that your data is being secure. Once we actually have a match, we then go ahead and encrypt that data at that point, and we package it into a zip file, and then we deliver that through our Helo Insights Cloud directly to the payer's data warehouse. From there, the payer will then have to use a two-factor authentication password to unzip the file and download their patient medical records. So one thing that we want to also say and point out as a way of being automated and secure from your previous traditional means is that from the time that is from rest to transit, all the data is all encrypted and secure. Helo Insights does not see any PHI or PII information. Once it's directly successfully delivered to the payer's data warehouse, all that information is purged off our clouds. So rest assured, that's the reason why a lot of providers and practices are really adopting this solution, because again, the security aspect in today's world, everybody's very sensitive with their information.
Well, that's incredible. All that security and the fact that the practices, it's free, and that's great. So there's no
Yeah.
risks there. Now, those payers receive a lot of data from multiple healthcare entities. How is Helo Insights able to bridge the gap between the payer and the provider?
So the way we bridge that gap, again, we're not receiving just claims data. We're also receiving supplemental data. Again, data that comes from the health plan directly. And as mentioned as earlier, the health plan wants to move more towards a value-based care. They're looking at population health tools. They're looking at these instances to paint a better picture of their member to be able to empower the provider. So how Helo Insights is be able to bridge that gap is, again, we are that conduit that's able to shift that data in a more seamlessly fashion and integrate it and render that information in a different type of format directly into the provider's eClinicalWorks EMR ecosystem. So the provider is not having to log into different portals, looking at different spreadsheets. All the information, even looking at using Prismo or using Commonwealth Care Quality, they're able to see all that information right at their fingertips.
Now, Frank, with some of our viewers, they may be medical providers themselves, and they want Helo Insights technology with one of their top payers. How can medical providers help facilitate their payers to adopt Helo Insights?
Yes, and this is really where we as Helo Insights, as a small division that continues constantly grow. Again, we're working with the 9 out of the top 10 largest health plans in a short amount of time, with the birth of us being maybe about 5 years old. We've grown that much traction, and we continue to grow through the word of mouth from our participating practices. If you as a practice are experiencing Helo Insights and you want one of your payers to come on board, please connect us with that payer via email using payeralliance@helo.com. You can contact us there. You can contact us website. You can contact your SAM as well to initiate that.
Well, Frank, thank you so much for taking the time and speaking with us today on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. It was a pleasure being here, and thank you for your time.
And thank you for joining our podcast today. You can find more podcasts like this on iTunes, YouTube, my.eClinicalWorks, and on our website, eClinicalWorks.com. On behalf of the podcast team, thank you for joining today.